So first off, a transformation is an operation that maps a pre-image, pre-image onto an image. So you're taking that pre-image, the one you're starting with, mapping it onto a new image. Now we do have three different transformations. One is a reflection. That's the one we're going to talk about today. So reflection, that one's kind of like a flip. So you're flipping your figure. The next one is a rotation. So that's turning your figure. So you turn it to rotate it. The last one is a translation. That one you're sliding your figure to a new spot. So we have a reflection, rotation, and a translation as our three different transformations. So below here, we want to name each transformation that maps the lighter flag, so these top ones here, onto the darker shaded flag. Those are these bottom ones here. So with number 1, if I pick a point on that flag, I'm just going to pick this bottom point here. In my image flag, that point is here now. So this first flag, all it did was move in this direction. So it slid down and to the right. So since it's sliding to create that new image, this would be a translation. So that one you would say would be a translation. Number 2, this one, that point is here, this point is here. Or if I chose this top right point, that one is over here now in this flag. So I have this center point where this point is going to rotate around that center point to get to the new one. So this one is turning in order to get that newer image. So that is a rotation. This last one, again picking a point from my lighter shaded flag, mapping it onto that newer image below. This one is flipping over. It's flipping over this line right here. So since it's flipping over, that would be a reflection. So there are 3 examples of your different transformations of a figure. Questions so far?
Do we use those terms below? Terms like if it's a translation, but we don't remember that word for some reason, we just put.
No, you need to write these ones. Specifically.
I'm just asking. Some people are forgetful.
I know. All right, so the lighter flag in these examples above is called the pre-image. So that's the one that you start with. So we started with that lighter shaded flag. That one's the pre-image. The darker shaded flag is called the image. So the figure you end with is considered your image. So that is kind of a little bit different to wrap your head around. Some people have problems with that. So pre-image, think pre. It's the beginning one, beforehand. Your image is your ending one. These are rigid transformations because they keep their size and shape. So in each of these transformations, that flag, it didn't change its size, it didn't get bigger or smaller, and it didn't change shape, so it didn't add on an extra line at the end or something like that. Okay, so it's not changing its shape and it's not changing its size. Okay, that is called an isometry. Okay, so those are called isometries. They keep that same size and shape as they transform. Okay, so that was a little bit about transformations. Now we're actually going to look at reflections specifically. Okay, so reflections are flips. Are transformations. In a line of reflection. Okay, so for it to be a reflection, you do need that line of reflection to reflect over. Okay, the point before the reflection is the pre-image, and the point after the reflection is the image, like I said earlier. Okay, pre-image is your starting point, image is your ending point. Okay, the pre-image and the image are the same distance from the line of reflection. Okay, so they have to be the same distance, hence your ruler. Okay, so we have to make sure each of these reflected points are that same length from a line of reflection. So that's what we're going to do in the example below. Okay, I'm just going to label each of my points here. So this point I'm going to label A on my triangle, this point B, and this bottom point here, C. Now we want to reflect each of those points over this line of reflection. Okay, so that would be your line of reflection. So starting with point A, I'm going to take my ruler. I'm going to use the centimeter side here just to make it a little bit more exact. Okay, so putting 0 on point A, you want to measure your distance to your line of reflection. Okay, so measure the distance to that line of reflection. Okay, I got about 3.5. So I'll slide my ruler over. Okay, and I'm going to make a point at 3.5. Okay, so this point right here, we would call this a prime. Okay, so we label our image point as a prime point. So that's what that apostrophe means. It's a prime. Okay, so all I did was measure there. I'm going to do the same thing with point B. Okay, so point B, say it's at about 7. So scooch it over here and make my point at about 7 millimeters. And label that one B prime because it's the image of that pre-image point B. Okay, same thing with point C. Measure out that distance. Make your point, label it C prime. Okay, so now that I have each of my image points, I can connect the dots here. Okay, and I'm going to use my ruler just to make it a little bit straighter. Okay, so you can see how this image does reflect over that line of reflection. Okay, so you do have problems like this on your assignment. So if you did start doing your assignment, you need to use your ruler over that line of reflection to do those problems. Okay, so any questions on how to reflect your pre-image over that line of reflection? using your ruler. All right, then on the back of your note sheet, now we're going to do some reflections on a coordinate grid. Okay, we're going to do some reflections on coordinate grid. So in each of these examples, you are given what your line of reflection is. So for example 3 here, which is probably example 1, you want to reflect it in the y-axis. Okay, so your line of reflection is going to be the y-axis. So what I like to do is take a highlighter and highlight that line of reflection. Okay, so for this one, it's going to be that y-axis. Okay, now, since we're on a coordinate grid, it's a little bit easier to get those distances from that line of reflection. So for point G is 1 unit away from that line of reflection. So we're going to go 1 unit further to make point G prime. Okay, point F is 1, 2, 3 units away from that line of reflection. So we need to count 3 units to the right to make F prime. And then point H down here is 2 units away, so we'll go 2 more units on that right side to get H prime. Okay, so then I can connect each of my points here. Okay, so here would be my image after that reflection. Now, I do want you to do an added step for these ones because you are on a coordinate plane. I need you to write out each of those prime coordinates. So G prime would be at 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so G prime is at 1, 4. F prime is at 1, 2, 3, and then up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And H prime is at 2, and then down 2, so -2. Okay, so I do need you to write out those prime coordinates of your image. Okay, so after that reflection, you need to write down those coordinates. Okay, this is an important step because later on in this chapter, you'll have to do more than one transformation. Okay, so it's helpful to have those coordinates to do the second transformation. Okay, questions on example 3? All right, next example, number 4. This time my line of reflection is at x is equal to 1. Is that a vertical line or a horizontal line?
Horizontal line.
It's vertical. Okay, so we have to go to where x is equal to 1, and we want all the values where x is equal to 1. So that's a vertical line. Okay, so we're going to reflect over that highlighted line. So this is why I like to highlight my line of reflection, because then you don't get confused. Okay, I'm trying to reflect over this line here, not my y-axis this time. Okay, so it's helpful so that you can count to that line of reflection. So point G now is 2 units away from that line of reflection. So we need to go 2 more units to the right to make G prime. Point F is 1, 2, 3, 4 units away. So again, go 4 units, 1, 2, 3, 4. That would be F prime. And then H is 1, 2, 3 units away. So go 1, 2, 3 units from that line of reflection. Okay, and then I can connect each of my points to create my image. Okay, so that would be reflected over that line x is equal to 1. Now again, I want to write out my prime coordinates. So we have G prime is at 1, 2, 3, and then up 1, 2, 3, 4. F prime, starting from the origin, is at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And H prime, right, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then down 2. Okay, so again, I do want to write out each of those coordinates. Yep. No. Not from your line of reflection, from your origin. So you need to start from the origin, right here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Not from your line of reflection, because you have to start from the origin when you're plotting points. Okay, questions on that example? Okay, then I want you guys to do example 5. So you're reflecting over the line y equals 2. All right, so example 5, you wanted to reflect over the line y is equal to 2, so that's the line I highlighted in pink. Okay, then I reflected each point, and I found each of the coordinates. So make sure your coordinates match with mine, and your picture looks similar to mine as well. Okay, so you should have each of those prime coordinates labeled out there. Okay, don't forget that step. Okay, questions on example 5. So before I do example 6, I want you to look down at the chart below. Okay, if it wants you to reflect in any of these lines, you can just change your given coordinates. So if it asks you to reflect in the x-axis, this one right here is your pre-image or your starting coordinate. So that's the one you'd be given. Okay, to reflect that point in the x-axis, all you have to do is make your y value the opposite sign. Okay, so if I have my original coordinate as 3, -1, to reflect that point in the x-axis, I would take the opposite, this will be 3, the opposite of my y value. So since it's negative, it will now be positive. Okay, so to reflect in the x-axis, all you do is change the sign for y. To reflect in the y-axis, this time you're changing the sign on your x value. Okay, so if I have 2, 1 as my coordinate, to reflect in the y-axis, I need to take the opposite of my x value, which would be -2, and then keep y the same as 1. Okay, so you're just taking the opposite sign of that value. Doesn't mean it's always negative. Okay, that negative in front means you're taking the opposite sign. Okay, the last one is if it asks you to reflect in the y equals x line. Okay, that line is your diagonal line with a slope of 1 through the origin. Okay, that's what y equals x is. To change your pre-image from x comma y to its image, all you do is switch your x and y coordinate. Okay, you just switch them. So if I have -1, 3 as my coordinate, to reflect it in the y equals x line, I just need to switch those values. So now I'd have 3, -1 as my new coordinate. Okay, so you just flip-flop those values when you have the line y equals x. So I wanted to go through that first before we did number 6, because in number 6 we want to reflect in the line y equals x. Okay, so we're reflecting in the line y equals x. So again, I still highlight this. So I'm going to start at the origin, and I need to go up 1 each time to make that diagonal line. Okay, same thing in reverse here. Okay, so that's your line y equals x. Okay, it's that diagonal line through the origin with a slope of 1. So now what I'm going to do, we're given each of the points of quadrilateral A, B, C, D. We need to plot each of those points. So if you haven't yet, plot each of those points. So point A at 1, 1. B at 3, 2. C at 4, -1. And D at 2, -3. Okay, and you do want to label your coordinates. Okay, so please make sure you label those coordinates if they're given to you labeled. Okay, now to find my image, what I'm going to do first is change each of my coordinates using this rule below. Okay, so to find A prime, we just need to switch our x and y value. Well, for A, it's going to be the same. For B, changing to B prime, we need to flip-flop these two values here. So now my B prime point will be at 2, 3. Okay, then C prime, switching x and y, we have -1, 4. And then D prime will be at -3, 2. Okay, so just flip-flopping x and y. So now that I have my prime coordinates, I can plot each of those on my graph. Okay, so A prime is still at 1, 1. B prime is at 2, 3. C prime is at -1, +4. And D prime is at -3, 2. Okay, and you can see that it is reflecting over that diagonal line. Okay, questions on how I did that last example? Okay, so you do have some problems on your assignment where you have to use the y = x line. So to do that again, you just flip-flop your x and y coordinates because y is equal to x. Okay, so since y is equal to x, you can replace it. All right, then you guys